Throughout the Soviet Union, there were a number of purges and executions which kept the population in check. Stalin, when he was in power, would organise a Great Purge, and would even before the Second World War damage the Red Army, severely after he ordered the executions of a number of generals. But before this there was great bloodshed in Russia, in the time of the Civil War, as the Bolsheviks fought for power. The Tsar, Tsarina and their children, of the former ruling family, had been slaughtered in Yekaterinburg, but there was another royal who was slaughtered by the Bolsheviks in 1918, and she was a granddaughter of Queen Victoria, and also the older sister of the last Russian empress, the Tsarina Alexandra. She was known for her beauty and charity amongst the poor. However, in her final days she suffered greatly. Join us today as we look at the horrific execution of Princess Elisabeth of Hesse, and remember to support our channel. Please make sure to subscribe. Born on the 1st of November 1864, Elisabeth was the second child of Ludwig IV, the Grand Duke of Hesse, and Princess Alice, who herself was a daughter of Queen Victoria. She was linked to many royal families across Europe, and she was raised modestly by her family. She did not enjoy the luxuries of servants, and instead was told to keep her own house tidy, and the children were assigned a number of chores. Elisabeth was taken on trips by her mother to visit wounded soldiers during the Austro-Prussian War, and she was fluent in English, and this was her first language. However, tragedy would strike when she was just 12, as diphtheria caused chaos within the royal household, and this killed Elizabeth's younger sister Marie, and also her mother, which caused her great upset and distress. Elisabeth was saved as she was staying with her grandmother at the time, but she believed the loss of her mother and sister was like a horrible dream that she would never wake up from. Elisabeth was a catch for many princes across Europe, and she was considered one of the most beautiful women in Europe. Her cousins stated that one could never take one's eyes off her, and that her beauty almost brought you to tears. With this, she was considered a woman who could help to forge alliances with different countries and royal families across the world. Her cousin Prince Wilhelm of Prussia, as a young man, fell in love with her, and despite being older, he said to his mother he would marry her one day. He wrote many love letters to her, but Elizabeth rejected his proposal. Many others tried to marry Elizabeth, but she rejected them, and the future Frederick II tried, and Queen Victoria said he was good and steady as well as safe, but Elizabeth declined to marry him, and Victoria found this shocking. However, the Grand Duke of Russia would be successful, and Sergei, the son of Empress Maria Alexandrovna of Russia, found himself attracted to Elizabeth. He was a serious and devout man, but Elizabeth and Sergei bonded over the losses of their parents. He proposed to her in 1883, and she did accept, which shocked Queen Victoria. Arrangements for the wedding went ahead, and this took place on the 15th of June 1884 at the chapel of the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg. She became known as Elisaveta Feodorovna, and it was here where the last Tsar of Russia, Nicholas II, would meet his future wife, Elizabeth's younger sister Alex. People in Russia were greatly fond of Elizabeth, and it was said everyone fell in love with her from the moment she came to Russia, and the couple lived in a palace in St. Petersburg. Her husband became the Governor-General of Moscow, and the couple never had children of their own, but Elizabeth was fond of her nieces and nephews, and she had huge parties for the children on their estate. They fostered Sergei's niece and nephew, but Elizabeth was a key part in the marriage of the Tsar and Tsarina Nicholas II and her sister Alex. She encouraged Nicholas to pursue Alex, and Elizabeth would convince her sister to convert to his religion, and she would later accept the proposal. But on the 17th of February 1905, her husband Sergei was assassinated in the Kremlin by Ivan Kalyayev. Elizabeth was heartbroken, and she said that God would punish us severely, as the Grand Duke kicked out 20,000 Jews from Moscow. He would forcibly remove them using soldiers, and they were kicked out without any notice. She believed the assassination was penance for this, and Elizabeth let herself fall weakly into an armchair, her eyes dry, and with the same peculiar fixity, she looked straight into space and said nothing. She refused to cry, but could not shake her grief. A Russian historian said, Elizabeth spent all the days before the burial in ceaseless prayer. On her husband's tombstone she wrote, Father, release them. They know not what they do. She understood the words of the Gospel's heart and soul, and and on the eve of the funeral she demanded to be taken to the prison where Kalyaev was being held. Brought into his cell, she asked, "Why did you kill my husband?" "I killed Sergei Alexandrovich because he was a weapon of tyranny. I was taking revenge for the people. Do not listen to your pride, repent, and I will beg the sovereign to give you your life. I will ask him for you. I myself have already forgiven you." On the eve of the revolution, she had already found a way out, forgiveness. Forgive through the impossible pain and blood, and thereby stop it then, at the beginning, this bloody wheel. By her example, poor Ella appealed to society, calling upon the people to live in the Christian faith. "No," replied Kalyaev, "I do not repent. I must die for my deed, and I will. My death will be more useful to my cause than Sergei Alexandrovich's death." Kalyaev was sentenced to death. "I am pleased with your sentence," he told the judges. "I hope you will carry it out just as openly and publicly as I carried out the sentence of the Socialist Revolutionary Party. Learn to look the advancing revolution right in the face." Following the death of her husband, Elisabeth wore mourning clothes, and she sold off large collections of jewels and luxuries, including her wedding ring. She tried to appease God by devoting her life to charity, and she opened up a convent and became its abbess. She then opened further chapels and a hospital, and she worked with her nuns to help the poor and sick. The princess was now helping people inside of the slums of Moscow, but she would act as an advisor to her sister, the Tsarina. She warned against the influence of Rasputin, and she may have been aware that he was going to be murdered. But Princess Elisabeth herself would go the same way as the Tsar and Tsarina, and she was brutally slaughtered. In 1918, Vladimir Lenin ordered Elisabeth's arrest, and she was then exiled to Yekaterinburg, just like the Tsar was. She was joined by the Grand Duke Sergei Mikhailovich and a number of princes and workers for them. They were then taken to Alpayevsk in May 1918. They were kept in a house on the outskirts of the town. They were kept under heavy guard, and for the revolutionaries, these people represented the monarchy. On the 17th of July 1918 at midday, a Cheka officer and Bolshevik workers came to their place of imprisonment. They robbed the prisoners of their money, and they then said they would be moved later in the evening to a factory compound. The Red Army Guards left, and they were replaced by the Cheka Secret Service officers. In the evening, the prisoners were woken up and were taken by cart on a road leading to the village of Siniachikia, and they were then taken to an abandoned mine pit. They were stopped and then thrown down off the cart. Princess Elisabeth and the others were beaten badly, and the Cheka then stood Elisabeth on the edge of the mine shaft, which was around 20 metres deep. She was bloodied and had been beaten badly, and the pious and harmless woman was then thrown into the pit first. She may have been dead or severely injured when she hit the bottom, but the others were thrown down the pit too. To make sure they were killed, the Cheka officers then threw grenades down the shaft. Only one victim died from the grenades, and the rest were killed by the beating and the fall. One of the Cheka executioners did say that Elisabeth and the others survived the fall into the mine, which is why a grenade was thrown at them. But following the explosion, he said Elisabeth and the others sung a hymn from down the shaft. A second grenade was then allegedly thrown, but the singing continued. But then wood was thrown down the shaft, and this was ignited and set on fire, burning all of those, including Elisabeth, at the bottom. On the 8th of October 1918, White Army officers found the remains of Elisabeth and the others. Her body, it was said, was in good condition, despite being there for 3 months, and it was shown that instead of fire, that she died from starvation or her injuries. A post-mortem showed Elisabeth died from her injuries sustained in the fall from the mine, but before she died, she bandaged the head of a prince with her nun's wimple. The body of Elisabeth was then taken to Jerusalem and was laid to rest there, and she was made a saint in the Russian Orthodox Church. Princess Elisabeth of Hesse and by Rhine was a princess who did great things for many people following the death of her husband. She publicly forgave her husband's murderer, and also then became a nun by turning her back on the imperial court to help others. She was no threat, but for Lenin she was a symbol of the monarchy, and for this she was to be executed in a horrific manner, but she never deserved the fate she received. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.